Welcome to A Meaningful Marketplace.
I'm Sarah Masoni from Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center, where I've helped countless dreamers launch their new food products. It's the science of taking a food delight from the kitchen to mass manufacturing and still keeping its great taste. That's what I do. I've been called the woman with the $1 million palate, although I haven't tried to cash that check yet. Listen in weekly for real-life stories.
I'm Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Hot Sauce and author of Preservation Pantry, modern canning from root to top and stem to core. I love inspiring business owners to get started on their journey, encourage folks to be part of their local community, and I'm excited to help business owners tell their stories.
Hello and welcome to the Meaningful Marketplace. We are here weekly to discuss the journeys of food entrepreneurs. We are glad you joined us today as we bring you stories of hope and inspiration. This is Sarah Masoni. I'm the Director of Product and Process Development at Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center in Portland, Oregon. Sarah Marshall is down in San Diego speaking in a farmers market conference this week. So I just want to give you a little bit of food news. I just got back from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was just down the street from the big football field where the Green Bay Packers play, and we were judging cheese for the U.S. Champions of Cheese. If you want to learn more about it, you can just Google U.S. Champions of Cheese, and there's tons of information about the competition and who the winners were. I also had the opportunity to travel to Southern Oregon to the Oregon Chocolate Festival in Ashland. It was the 21st year, and we had about 50 vendors there where you could taste chocolate and purchase your favorite products that you found walking the show floor. I judged cheese and then I judged chocolate all in 1 week. So it was sort of like what people tell me, a dream job for a week. But I'm not here alone today. I would like to go ahead and introduce my co-hosts. We're partnering with the Regional Food Business Center to bring you guests from our 6-state region. And we currently are meeting business owners from the great state of Colorado. I'd like to welcome our co-host, Mike Gabel from CSU Spur. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Sarah Masoni. I am truly envious of you being able to judge cheese and chocolate.
I know. The thing about cheese and chocolate is they actually have a lot in common. So they can be liquid and solid. They have high fat and in some cases some sugar or no sugar, and sometimes we do put salt on our chocolates. I mean, it was like the greatest week ever.
Did you get any fatigue tasting all those different products?
No, I actually got to bed early and managed to not eat anything spicy during the whole time. Like we did go have lunch at a hamburger place and I didn't get any onions on my burger. So I was fine. Thank you so much for being our Colorado expert while we're meeting all of these wonderful new friends. Do you have any Colorado food news or events you want to tell us about?
No, nothing. It's a fairly quiet month. We're ramping up. Our Food Innovation Center is housed here at CSU Spur, which is a new campus downtown. And so one of the things we do every month is on our second Saturday, we open up the campus and we have, a lot of families and school groups and scout groups come in. And on Saturday, it was our biggest. We had a record attendance. It was 1,250 people made it through our doors, which was amazing. It was a girls in STEM event. And it was fun to see the buildings packed.
That's cool. There were actually 1,000 people eating chocolate on Saturday too. So I think people have spring fever. They wanted to get out and try new things.
Fantastic.
So we'd like to encourage you, our listeners, to connect with your state by signing up for the Regional Food Business Center's newsletters. It's a breeze to sign up. Go to Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center.com and hit connect with us, and choose the button to receive newsletters. We want to thank our sponsor for supporting the Meaningful Marketplace. Thank you for helping spread the word about small business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's hear a word from our sponsor.
The Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center is the proud sponsor of the Meaningful Marketplace podcast, giving a voice to food from across the 6-state region of Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. The Food Business Center supports Northwest and Rocky Mountain food industry makers as part of the USDA's National Network of Food Business Centers, supporting a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system as a go-to source for small and mid-tier food and farm businesses with a focus on underserved communities. providing education in the form of technical knowledge, business programs, and industry news. We sponsor trade shows, meetups, and conferences to connect growers, producers, retailers, distributors, and processors, all to stimulate business and raise the standards of our storied food industry. Join us as we travel through the 6-state region, learning more about food makers, food hubs, and food systems. Visit the website at Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Businesses.com to get connected.
Mike and I are not here alone. I do have a guest in the studio with us here, and it's Kylan Ganger, and he is of Drink Antiqua, making a world-class sparkling water right there in Colorado. We are so delighted to have you on our show today. We like to connect our listeners to you and give them the best way to follow your story. How can they find you on social media and online, Kylan?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sarah. Yeah, like you said, it's drinkantiqua.com, and all of our social handles are also just Drink Antiqua. So it's like Antigua, but with a QU.
Thanks for that update. So let's start from the beginning. When did you start your business and what inspired you to start Antiqua?
Yeah, so I guess I formed the LLC in February of last year, but yeah, I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur and always wanted to start something. And specifically, I've been inspired by food businesses for a long time. At one point, a shout out to another podcast, the How I Built This podcast. I'd listened to every episode of that, and my favorite episodes were always the food entrepreneurs for some reason. I think just growing up, I always had like a connection to food. My mom cooked a lot, and I always liked to experiment in the kitchen with her. So yeah, always loved food businesses in general. But had the idea for this company actually on a trip. So after graduating from Boulder, my girlfriend and I took a trip to Europe as like our graduation trip. And at one of the Airbnbs we were staying at, they had a tonic water in the fridge. And I had never had tonic water, but it was free. And so I poured that over ice. And I was sort of expecting something sort of like a club soda, or I honestly thought tonic water was just another pseudonym to sort of market sparkling water. But obviously, as soon as I tasted it, I realized it was very different than just a sparkling water or club soda. And I really liked that flavor, that sort of bitter, unique flavor. And so when I got back to the States, I started looking around at what tonic water was and where I could buy it. And I noticed that like almost all of it was pretty high sugar, which is something I try to avoid. If I'm going to drink a sparkling water, I go for, a LaCroix or a Spindrift with something low sugar. And so all the tonic water was sort of 15 to 20 grams of sugar. And they also all used quinine powder, which isn't a problem for most people, but like my girlfriend, when she drinks it, it like hurts her stomach. And I realized that there's some lasting long-term effects if you're someone who enjoys it frequently. So I felt like there was a real opportunity to sort of enter that market with a like more new and fun brand. At the same time, it's sort of dominated by what you consider legacy sort of categories and companies like Schweppes. And so that was sort of the idea that sparked me to start this journey.
That's interesting that you were inspired by your trip. It's
Mhm.
always fun to have that memorable story to share with
Yes.
your drinkers and your listeners. So tell us about the process of selecting the botanicals and juices that you use in your beverages.
Yeah. So at this point, I did like a lot of just self-research, finding out what I could. I started experimenting with what makes a tonic water a tonic water. So to call something a tonic water, it actually has to have the quinine powder. But to me, what makes a tonic water is the bitter flavor. Like I said, I wanted to avoid quinine powder and started looking at like what are ways that other beverages achieve that bitter flavor. So a lot of ChatGPT. This was right at the time where that was sort of coming out. So asking it like, what are bittering agents that you can sort of achieve a similar flavor without using quinine powder? And so I sort of got a preliminary list of gentian root, horehound root, things I'd never heard of, honestly, that are sort of, I feel like, most consumers wouldn't recognize as ingredients, and sort of putting that together. And then ultimately, a lot of the work was done actually by Mike's team at Spur. So once I had my sort of preliminary cobbled together idea for a drink, that's when I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And actually, that's how I got in contact with CSU Spur.
Well, let's turn it over to Mike to ask our next question.
It's fascinating meeting you, Kylan, initially. And I don't think I ever realized, too, that tonic water and seltzer water are two different things. And what I find fascinating, I don't know if it's just a fun tidbit to throw in there, even the quinine, I go like, why do I recognize that? And really, it was, it's the same medicine you use for malaria treatment, right?
Yeah, in South America.
Yeah. And so do you want to go through, I think you even told me this, Kylan, back in the day, like some of the history of how that developed and how we got tonic water.
No, exactly. So it's sort of one of those things that's also goes into the branding that I sort of put behind it. But tonics as a whole are sort of a very storied category of like you think of tinctures, you think of tonics as sort of this almost medieval sort of treatment for whatever ailment you may be facing. And specifically, like you mentioned, Sarah, malaria is actually how we get gin and tonic. So British soldiers, when they were stationed across the British Empire, would be given a ration of quinine to fight against malaria. And because it has sort of a unique flavor that some people really don't like, that's how they started mixing it with gin. And so that's how we get our gin and tonics, which is actually super interesting.
Oh, and I have the can in front of me, but just so the listeners can say, what are kind of the final bittering agents that you ended up on? And then you said you didn't want it super sweet. I know most tonic waters just have, kind of like a soda pop, high fructose
Mhm.
corn syrup or sugar. What did you end up going for your sweeteners? And how did you decide on that?
Yeah, so our bittering blend is, I call it I guess our bittering base, sort of a blend of multiple bittering agents. So we have everything from gentian root to horehound root to dandelion, some orange zest, some grapefruit zest, some quassia bark, some yerba santa. So really, we have quite a few varieties of herbs that sort of balance out, some are more earthy, some are more just straight bitter. And then as far as sweeteners, all of the three SKUs that we have that bittering base to give it that bitter flavor. And then two of them we add some fruit purees to give it sort of a little bit of a more unique flavor. Actually, when I found this like new fondness for tonic water, what would typically do is, especially on flights, I'd get a tonic water and then the true lemon or true lime mixture, and then mix that in for sort of like a fruity version of a tonic water. And so that was sort of the basis for those other two SKUs.
That's great. I actually love tonic water. When I was a kid, we went to Venezuela and we had to drink tonic water probably for malaria. And I think that just set my mind. And so when I drink it, it's very familiar to me and I really enjoy it as well.
Nice.
So, Kylan, I have, is Antigua supposed to be as a mix-in to, an alcoholic beverage, or is it meant to be drinking by itself, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I definitely sort of frame it as a little bit of both. I like it on its own as like a non-alc cocktail. So I'm someone who I definitely enjoy like, an IPA or some sort of cocktail at the end of the day. But also I think more people are realizing that drinking less is always better for you. And so one of the things that I've tried to do and continue to do like is lean into more non-alc options. So like as I mentioned before, I love Spindrift and that's sort of a little bit more flavor than maybe LaCroix. But I still felt like when I drink a Spindrift, it didn't have that quite nuance of flavor that I look for like in a cocktail or something. And so I like them on their own, definitely as like a non-alc option. But then obviously I've also been experimenting with them as a mixer. And it's really nice, I think, because it has real fruit juice as a mixer, because you can go to the store and get some sort of mixer. Like I think they used to be Q tonic, but now Q mixers are really like sort of in that category as well. But I think it's nice to have that real fruit flavor in cocktails as well.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Mike, why don't you ask him about his flavor profiles and the names of his beverages? Oregon State University's College of Agricultural Sciences and the Food Innovation Center are proud sponsors of Meaningful Marketplace. With a mission to serve all Oregonians, we are committed to giving voice to those whose food and agricultural stories are not always heard. By providing access and opportunity for a more diverse and just food system, because food brings people together.
Well, Kylan, we would love to hear more about kind of your flavor profiles, what you launched, maybe what's looking for the future, and kind of how you decided on those flavors that you ended up ultimately launching.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, my experience was definitely like mixing in those true lemon and true lime mixers into tonic water, and I think when everyone thinks of sort of a tonic based cocktail, you immediately go to gin and tonic, which usually, if you order that at a bar, nine times out of 10, you're going to get that with a little slice of lime on there. And so that was sort of my beginning, was citrus heavy. I think it blends well with the tonic and really stands out. But luckily, yeah, using the team at CSU, Caitlin specifically has such a knowledge of so many ingredients that I think, again, 90% of people probably don't know of. And so really with the citrus, I knew I wanted something, lime forward, but we were able to experiment with a variety of citruses. So the lime actually is lime, obviously, and then some yuzu as well for a little bit more unique flavor. And then also some calamansi as well. So that one's probably my favorite. And one thing that I also like about what I ended up with is all three of them, although they have that bittering base, they all really stand alone, and they all have a very unique profile. So someone that likes the original, which is just the bittering agent, is also might not like the raspberry, which is probably our most fruit forward one. So that one's a good one where people that maybe aren't as, or they wouldn't self-describe themselves as someone who enjoys bitter as much. The raspberry one is really, really good to try first. For that one, we use raspberry puree and then also dragon fruit puree. So it's really, like I said, a fruit forward, really tart sort of thing. And what I've been demoing recently and when I'm at farmers markets, if a kid wants to try it, I always tell them to try the raspberry. And usually that's the one they like out of all three.
Can you tell us how you launched your product when you were brand new?
Yeah, definitely. So I went through a slew of trying to find a manufacturer because I was set on doing aluminum cans. I think just from a producer perspective, like producing a product is inherently like gonna cause some environmental strain. And so like to reduce that as much as possible is, using sustainable ingredients. So no plastic bottles. And I also wanted to use aluminum just for shipping costs. Like you can have less of an environmental impact that way. So to do that, obviously you either have to have tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment to do it yourself, or you can find a co-packer. So once I was able to find a co-packer that was able to do it, we got it produced. And so then I just started sort of hitting the pavement around Denver. I would just carry my cooler with me with some drinks and then just go to really anyone who would listen to me. So local liquor stores, local coffee shops, restaurants, and then also some supermarkets as well. I definitely wanted to start, I think there's sort of two approaches you can take as a food entrepreneur. And I actually studied entrepreneurship, and like I said, I've always been like passionate about it. So I think I have quite a bit of knowledge on some of the companies and how different companies operate. And I think you have sort of two paths of either raising money, really trying to launch, a Sprouts, a Safeway, trying to get into those big box stores immediately with a ton of capital and a ton of product, or doing it more, self-funded, which this is the route I've chose to take is, fund it with debt, fund it with my own funds, and really start hyper local and then scale out from there. So yeah, that was sort of the journey, is just really talking to people, telling them about the story, really building those local connections and going from there.
So you built up a couple different sales channels that you mentioned, Kylan. So you're doing some farmers markets. You're kind of, doing through your website sales. What else has worked for you? Where are you getting the most sales from? Where are you getting kind of the best responses from these different channels?
Yeah, definitely. So I think online is just such a hard category to meet, just from a perspective of like, as a consumer, and I am my ideal consumer, sort of. I built this brand around what my tastes are and what my buying patterns are. And I'm someone who I will never, I have, but like I don't consistently buy beverages online. You're going to pay high shipping costs. It's a heavy product. And I just like the experience of going into a store, seeing what's there and sort of picking it out that way. So online for me has definitely been a challenge. And I've, from the beginning, sort of never wanted it to be a direct to consumer sort of brand, and definitely want it to be more of a brick and mortar sort of local store first company. So for us, definitely our sales channel, we recently launched in Lever's Locavore, which is a local grocery store. They definitely support, their employee owned first of all, but then they also just, you can do self-distribution. You can be a smaller brand like myself and get in there, and they let you demo with customers. So that's definitely been our best sales channel so far. And then also farmers markets are great because it's almost like paid demoing. So when I go to Levers, I'm in there telling people, and then it's like, hey, it's on aisle 2 if you're interested. But at the farmers market, you're sampling constantly. It's sort of, there's an inherent dynamic of just people trying things, giving you feedback, telling you about what they like and don't like. So that's been really good from a feedback perspective of just understanding, I have the product, I believe in the product, but also there's how I position it to people, because it is a little bit unique of a product. I'm not just doing sparkling water. I'm also not just doing, this is for cocktails. It's sort of this Frankenstein of an in-between sort of product. And so it's been useful from like a positioning perspective.
You just mentioned customer feedback at the farmers market. Could you give us a story about how you used customer feedback that made a change in your product?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the challenges is educating people that are younger about tonic water. So that was also one of the drivers for me starting this company, is I felt like once I realized that I like tonic water, I started asking all my friends, and I'm 24. I started asking all my friends about do they like tonic water? Had they tried it? And I'd say, most of them didn't even know what it was. And if they did know what it was, they sort of associated it with sort of maybe their dad likes gin and tonics or something. It's a little bit of an older sort of feeling around the brand. Educating people on what tonic water is definitely like a large part of it. So that's one side of it. Is I've had a challenge in like describing what tonic water is, letting them know like the history of it. And then the second part is for people that are familiar with it, letting them know why I chose to not use quinine. I specifically wanted to use different botanicals and not just use quinine powder there's actually like some studies that have shown that like if you use tonic water long term, it can also lead to like some not ideal health side effects. And so educating people about just this is a better alternative if you like tonic water. Also, like I said, super high sugar, and people know that's bad. So if they like a tonic water, our original is 0 calories. It's just a bittering agent versus if they're drinking Schweppes or if they're drinking even Fever Tree, they're getting a lot of sugar that way. So those two things have definitely been, as I've talked to customers, I've realized that those are sort of the main channels that I should talk about as far as like the value of the product besides just a taste perspective.
So, talking about market trends, what current market trends are influencing your product line and your offerings?
Yeah, so I think the first, and this is just sort of lucky with timing, is just non-alc is like super, super popular right now. I mean, we have amazing brands like Athletic Brewing that, they launched 10 years ago, and this year they're going to do like 500 million in sales.
And when
And so
you say non-alc, you mean non-alcoholic, right?
yes, yeah.
Non-alc is like something people say on the street.
Yes. Yeah. Just a shorter form, especially with younger people, which is super interesting. I mean, I think people associate, especially college age kids, they're drinking more than 30-year-olds, and 30-year-olds are drinking more than usually 50-year-olds. But we're seeing a trend really in young people. Like a lot of young people are choosing to really prioritize health and wellness over, maybe going to the bar as much. I think that it's important to frame it in like a fun way. Like, sure, you can do, sort of the hardcore version of just I'll drink LaCroix and I'll have a water when I go to the bar. But I think a lot of people and a lot of companies are leaning into this more fun way of like non-alc can be fun, and you can really have a nuanced beverage that really feels like a cocktail, and you enjoy it like a cocktail. And so I'd say that's the first thing. And then also I think that I've really just been trying to lean into hyper local, and especially Colorado is really an amazing place to start a food company. I mean, it's probably one of the better places you can do it, especially Boulder's known for sort of, I mean, Izzy came out of Boulder, Rowdy Mermaid. There's a Justin's. There's a bunch of really good brands that started super hyper local. Boulder's Farmers Market is probably one of the best markets in the country if you can get in there. And so really leaning into sort of the story of, I'm born and raised in Colorado. I went to CU Boulder, and so I think having a founder behind it and talking to people about the brand has really been helpful as well.
So, Kylan, you've been able to scale and, commercialize a product in about a year and a half, right? Or has it even been less time?
I didn't get the product till late October, so it's not been that long.
Yeah. So what have you learned as a founder? What has been some of the biggest kind of hurdles that you've had to come across, and how did you deal with them?
I think the first thing is you have to have complete like tunnel vision and, a real temerity with your product, like truly believing in it, because so many people are just going to say they don't like it. And I knew that going into this, especially I feel like tonic water is such a love-hate thing that like there's so many people. I mean, I would drop off product at a place and they would be like, we don't like it, so we don't want to carry it, which is hard to hear when you've sort of put all of your money and like a lot of your effort into something. And so like believing in the product and being able to take no's just on the chin, I think is super important. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a tough journey. I think the second thing is also I've really learned that like starting anything, but especially a business, is like a flywheel. Like getting that first 90-degree turn is like so much effort. Like, so you have to talk to 100 businesses and maybe you'll get your first yes. But once you really keep with it, everything sort of starts moving. And so that's how it felt for me. Like the beginning was really felt like a standstill, just like going to places. Some people just don't even want to talk to you. Like they have so many like distributors coming to them, trying to get them to sign with them. And you're just another foot in the door, and you're just another person selling their product. And so it's hard sometimes to stick with it. But like I said, once I just kept sticking with it, that's when I started to notice that like sort of everything started happening at once. I was getting into different markets that are hard to get into. I was getting into grocery stores, which are sometimes hard to get into. And so I really think like realizing that it's going to be really hard at the beginning and then get easier as you continue to do it is super important.
So I guess next step might be distribution outside of Colorado. Do you have any plans of how you're going to distribute your beverage?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm going to start talking to some local distributors who sort of service the mountain area and see what they think about it. I've actually it's sort of interesting, like I mentioned with the flywheel, like once I'm in these markets, actually a lot of distributors go to the markets, and sort of people eyeing brands that are opening restaurants are in the market, sort of looking at what's new and what local brands they are. And so that's been really helpful to sort of get feedback from more professional people who are in the business and sort of looking at that higher scale, because it's always a different conversation. When I talk to someone who's a coffee shop owner in Denver, it's going to be a different conversation than when I'm talking to sort of a multi-state distributor. So yeah, definitely looking to sort of expand outside of Colorado. And then also, I definitely think growing too fast can be its own issue. Not that I, have Safeway not banging down my door, but definitely want to look at like scaling into some more well-known, like Sprouts or something like that, that sort of is sort of that middle person in between, or that middle level in between a big, huge retailer, but also not just like a one-off levers market. So I think those next two sort of goals.
Those are good goals. So tell us a little bit about how you differentiate your beverage on the shelf since you're in a really competitive market. What
Yeah.
are your core values that help define your brand?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, and this is probably going to be a little bit contrary to maybe some of the brands you've had before, but I sort of avoid all the health benefit side of things. So as a consumer, I feel like now I'm so flooded when I go into the market, when I go down the drink aisle or really any aisle with like, this has ashwagandha in it and this has some sort of probiotic in it and this has, XYZ. And I almost feel like we've gotten away from just a good product that I enjoy. And so that's sort of what I've leaned into is just like, and you'll see on my packaging, it's super minimal. Like the main thing I want people to realize is that we use real fruit for the ingredients, which I think is sort of a thing that as a consumer, that's what I'm looking for. And so keeping it simple and really letting the product speak for itself from a quality perspective is really one of our values. Into the next part of your question, I'd say quality is sort of the first thing that I'd say is like a pillar of the brand, is that we're using real ingredients. And so the product costs more, like we're $4 on the shelf and you can get a sparkling water for, if you buy a 12 pack of LaCroix, you're going to, it's like 30 cents or something per can. So I think to get consumers to understand the product is really leaning into the quality. And when they look at the ingredients too, we're using all these wholesome ingredients. Like I say, they're all herbs and they're roots that I'm buying from people that cultivate it in California and Colorado. And so quality's definitely been one. And then, yeah, sort of similar to my first point, I've always had this belief that like building a product that people love is sort of like the purest form of capitalism. Like I always think about, you can go build, the guy who built Salesforce it's a beautiful multi-billion dollar business, but no one's excited when they purchase a Salesforce plan for their company. But I, as a consumer, like some of the brands I love, like Goyaki, when I buy yerba mate, like I'm super excited about it, not just because I love the product, but also because I know that like the founders and the team behind it are really passionate about it, and they chose to do something really focused on creating a high quality beverage. So that's also just been a focus, is really like, I sort of call it like positive capitalism, of just like people feeling good about both the product and also the brand behind it.
Oh, it's fantastic, Kylan. Super excited for you. You are a sole founder, right? It's you doing everything behind the scenes. Are you looking to bring anyone else on in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely me, but I also want to give credit where credit's due. So like I have a super supportive girlfriend and family that are like, hey, if you need this product delivered, we can haul it out there or whatever. I think it's super hard to do it by yourself, but I think one of the reasons that I feel like I had to is that it's hard to find someone with the same passion if they didn't come to it on their own. So, I mean, if I was walking down the street, or if I knew someone in my class who was like, yeah, I want to go in on like a sparkling beverage business, that'd be super awesome. But it's also a hard business. Like food is hard on its own, but so is competing against Coke
Yeah.
and these big brands. And so I think it's a tough business, and so it's hard to find people who are passionate about it when it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for sure.
Okay, so do you have any future upcoming product launches that we should be excited about?
I don't think so in the near future. Like I said, this first batch we have quite a bit. So really the focus is on expanding our footprint in the near future. But I am hoping to sort of find some local bars and restaurants to sort of do some non-alc stuff with. Like if I could get the product in the hand of some people who are doing some interesting stuff as far as actual cocktails. Like I said, I'm in my kitchen sometimes experimenting with these things, but it'd be nice to get sort of a professional to to experiment with it and sort of give me some solid recipes. So that's sort of the focus, I think, is expanding our footprint, but also getting the product in the hands of people who will do really cool things with it.
Do you have any final advice for folks that are thinking about starting up a new business? What would be a couple key tips and tricks for them that you could share?
I think the first thing is do it. Like so many people are just going to tell you like, oh, it's hard, it might not work. This might not work, obviously. People are risk averse, and it's like, you could just not ever start it and not, I don't need to spend the money I'm spending to do this, but it's something that I want to do. And I think that that's really one of the underlying tenets of what makes America great, is that you can just go and try it. And, if you fail, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, trust me. And also with that, you're going to see so much personal development and growth, even though I haven't been doing this super long. And like I said, the process just to get the cans in hand was a lot of work, but it's given me so much skill that I would not have otherwise. When you're the driver and you're the owner, it's so different than if maybe you'd say like, oh, I should go work at Spindrift, or I should go work at Athletic Brewing for a couple of years to sort of understand it. But I think that sort of just taking the leap is super important. And by the same token, I think that so many times I've heard entrepreneurs say that like if they knew what they knew now about the business that they started, they wouldn't have done it. So
Yes,
I
it's
think
true.
I think it's important to sort of almost go at it when you're ignorant about it, because you have that sort of mentality of like, I think I can do it. And that's what will get
Yeah.
you through versus,
Yeah.
doing some comprehensive analysis on, is there a perfect market fit? How many sales can I do this quarter? I think that sort of takes the fun and the passion out of it. So
Mike, any last questions for Kylan?
Just we're excited for you, Kylan. This is great to see. I think when our team got you dropped off like a 12 pack of your product. I have it here. I love the graphics. It's just nice and bold. And we sat around and tasted it as a team, and we were all high fiving each other. It was just that it's fun to see your product. We all loved them, and so we congratulate you on the amazing work you're doing, and are excited to see you continue your growth.
yeah,
You should
thank you.
see that packaging on the wall at Spur for everyone to know. So we want to send our customers and your new fans to you directly. What is the best way for them to order from you?
Yeah, the easiest way, if you're, not in Colorado, is definitely just go to the website, drinkantiqua.com. Like I said, we service all the lower 48. So if you're in Alaska, I'm sorry, we're not there yet, but we'll ship it to you that way. But if you're in the local area, I'm doing some farmers markets up in Fort Collins, the Fort Collins Winter Market, which I think is ending in the next few weeks, but I'll be there. And then also we're in Levers Locavore, which is in the Highlands neighborhood of Denver. So we have our product there, and I'm demoing there often. So come by and say hi.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the Meaningful Marketplace podcast. Before we go, please show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Meaningful Marketplace Podcast. You can also call in or text with questions for Sarah and Sarah at 503-395-8858. We could not do this without our fantastic team at Joy of Creation Production House. Thank you to Kayleen, our production coordinator, and Dave and Haley, our audio engineer. Until next week, thank you for joining us. Bye for now.